Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Sassen. Here. Councilmember Shrubnik. Here. Councilmember Lutsis.
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Here.
Mayor Herbig.
Here.
All present.
Next on the agenda is our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the city of Kenmore is situated upon the ancestral lands of the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Soxhawtl, Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, and other tribes who are part of the Coast Salish peoples. We recognize and express our deepest respect for their enduring stewardship and profound relationship with this land, which they have cherished and protected since time immemorial. We honor the First Peoples, acknowledge their vibrant cultures, and commit ourselves to learning from their wisdom in our journey to promote justice, equity, and mutual understanding. We pledge to stand alongside these communities in acknowledging past injustices and working towards a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land. Now, if you'd all please stand and join me in the flag salute. Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Unless there are any objections, the agenda will stand approved as published. Seeing no objections, the agenda is approved. Madam Deputy City Manager, where's the fun?
Oh, we have so much fun happening in Kenmore. We couldn't choose, so we have two events to highlight. And the first one was the Pride flag raising. And you'll notice that Hank Herron is prominently displayed in all of the photos of these events. We're so happy to have our mascot with us when we celebrate. So the Pride flag raising, you can see, isn't that a great photo of Hank on the front steps? And you'll see the great crowd we had for that event. And we really want to thank Deputy Mayor O'Kane for her remarks that morning. And just was a beautiful day and a beautiful way to kick off Pride Month in Kenmore. Love the pictures. And then we had the opening day of the farmers market. And you can see there's Hank again with Mayor Herbig. I love that picture. And another beautiful day. It feels like summer, even though summer's not officially here yet, but it feels like summer to me in Kenmore. And all these great pictures of Hank. And look at that baby looking at Hank. So fun. Yeah, so many great experiences. And we are so happy about our farmers market every Wednesday through the end of August, 3 to 7 p.m. on 181st next to Town Square. And there's someone thinking about high-fiving Hank. So really just so happy that we're celebrating our summer and yeah, that Hank is part of it.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is our public comments. We want to welcome everyone to the council's meeting. Please address your comments to the mayor and the council. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will call your name when it is your turn. Please state your name and city of residence and keep within your allotted time to make every person feel welcome and safe here. Please refrain from booing, clapping, heckling, yelling, other interruptions. The meeting is being recorded for transparency. Thank you for being here and for sharing your input respectfully. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 4 guests wishing to speak on site and 1 online. Jim Howard, Patrick O'Brien, Elizabeth Mooney, and Jim Myers.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jim Howard. I'm a resident of Kenmore. I understand the City Council will be deciding whether to approve the 30% design for 61st Avenue Northeast sidewalk project this evening. And I want to encourage you to vote no, not because I'm not totally in favor of improving the safety of the roadway, but for other reasons. I'm speaking tonight as a landscape architect that has worked on many similar multimodal transportation projects, and as a former City of Kenmore Planning Commissioner that understands the importance of transportation planning and community development. Last October, I stood before this council and stated you don't have enough information to make an informed decision on whether to save or remove the existing red maple trees. At that time, council proceeded to vote to proceed with 30% design and directed staff to save as many trees as possible. I'm back tonight to say to you, you still do not have enough information to make an informed decision regarding this project. Missing information includes the October 2023 arborist report needs to be updated to include a below-ground analysis of the tree root growth in subgrade soils. Tree root growth needs to be inventoried along with subgrade soil tests to determine organic content, fertility, and mechanical analysis. PS&E needs to be contacted to find out if their level of commitment to this project. Unfortunately, in the past, PSE has damaged the existing red maple trees with very poor pruning practices. What is their commitment to stop this harmful pruning practice in the future? If the city chooses a large canopy street tree to replace the removed red maple trees, is PSE willing to professionally prune the trees in their current practice of topping? I would not be in favor of a small 15-foot height tree under the power lines as a replacement tree. That would look aesthetically, it would be unattractive and environmentally not providing much benefit. The Northeast 93rd Street intersection needs a traffic study to determine if a T intersection or a roundabout intersection provides the best traffic circulation and safety for multimodal cars, bikes, and pedestrians. And I'm going to run out of time, but we also need planning to determine to meet the climate action plan requirements to build strategically, conserve water, manage stormwater, and minimize flooding and preserve and restore natural systems. That's it. So.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien?
Pat O'Brien, Ken Moore. Good evening. I gave the city council and lodged with the city council an affidavit from Stacy Valenzuela stating that she's had multiple conversations with the owner of the old fire station, and that fire station was in fact available to the city, and several city workers, including Rob Carlindsey, has stated that it was not available when it was, and that is going to result in a $30 million, $40 million, $50 million, who knows, expenditure when we could have had the fire station for $3 to $5 million. So I'm asking for an inquest. We have an affidavit. We have all the Zoom meetings that we can look at, and we can see who lied and when, because that is absolutely an abomination to put through this thing, this maintenance facility with no scrutiny. And you really haven't scrutinized this for the veracity of the statements by staff and by the results. And it's put this city in financial peril. So the onus is on you to conduct an inquest and find out who's lying, because somebody's definitely lying. So the other thing is the testing of the dredge. We've met with the city twice, a couple of us, and it seems like the city is ready to go for whatever ecology says, and that's not the highest and most detailed research into the dioxins, PCBs, arsenic, lead. So I encourage you to say no to what the city staff is saying and encourage the maximum amount of testing, the widest amount of testing, the deepest amount of testing, and use a vacuum type dredge rather than scooping it out haphazardly where there's silt everywhere and lots of problems. So you should be listening to the citizens that, I mean, some of them have master's degrees in fisheries. They know what they're talking about. You should be listening. So also on the fire station, if Sound Transit winds up with that, there's collusion. There's collusion between Sound Transit and Kenmore saying, oh, well, we won't put our hands on that fire station because you've got plans for that parking lot. And that, in fact, is what I think happened. And so if that's true, that's collusion between our city and the staff that swore to uphold and help Kenmore residents against this sort of thing, and they participated in it. And so if that kind of collusion's going on, which can happen, ask anybody on the West Seattle Bridge what happened. I just
Thank
wish I had
you.
more time. Thank you.
Ms. Mooney?
Hi, Elizabeth Mooney. I'm a resident of Kenmore since 1995. I'm here tonight to say a few things, but since you're talking about 61st Avenue Northeast sidewalk replacement project, 30% design, I want to put my highest priority in my comments to support the work that Jim Howard has been doing. He invited me to a meeting with our city engineer about a year ago, Mr. Vicente, where I listened, and he, I know, has sent you all a long, very detailed letter that I'm now trying to spread out to the rest of our community because we really don't know enough. But I've been talking, and yeah, I don't think you should pass this tonight because that's the street that is the habitat constrained as it is for Chetchathal, AKA Raya 08.0056. And even talking to Mr. Vicente, you do not have enough focus put on the area on 61st Avenue Northeast from 190th all the way down to the lake. And that is where WashDOT's going to be taking out under 520, the fish barrier. And we want to put egg boxes into Chetchathal, where you now, thank you, own a piece of land in that area south of 190th. So all I'm saying is 68th got such a beautiful, safe development with all the islands, and Jim Howard is an expert in this field. We're working on environmental justice, neighborhood improvements, and the fairness in that side of Kenmore where the 68th project has been completed, where it's safer for bicyclists and pedestrians. 61st could be so much better. So let's just wait and get the community here and do it right. It's going to include all these things that he's been writing to you about. And we haven't even had a big old meeting about it. You've got so much focus on Lake Point, which I really think is another huge issue that we should pull back, take some of the oxygen that you've been putting in there, all the resource that the staff and all these meetings have been going on to Lake Point. While now, like Patrick O'Brien is talking about this dredging, we now have a SEPA appeal deadline of June 17th. You know, I wish it was an environmental impact statement because that's like a domino effect. We've got money going into potentially Lake Point. So put the money into 61st. Let's get coho salmon 3 years from now, work with the students and do it right, which is looking a lot more like what's on 68. Make it beautiful, make it environmentally friendly, make the trees that fit with your climate action plan.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Jim Myers?
Hi, my name is Jim Myers, and I won't be speaking virtually. I had signed up for that, so you get me live this evening. I am following on some of the comments that Jim Howard made, not to really go into great detail. I mean, I think in some ways, a lot of our neighborhood group and PERC we've been very lucky that the city has taken the time and the city staff have taken the time and explained a lot of these projects to us. And I have been often miss in not going through all the details, so I'm not always the expert on these things. But I think for this 61st Avenue development, I know that the city has a lot of really fantastic programs with the stream, with the street, moving things around, opening up the stream and putting in new culverts. And I just think that when you're at the 30% point, you can sort of weigh your options, but I think there may be some thought about the coordination, because I know I've talked with some of the staff members who have talked about shifting 61st Avenue to make more room on one side because the stream is undercutting it. But so all these things, I think need to be a little bit better coordinated, and rather than attacking them in a sense piecemeal when the funding becomes available, to have that larger vision about what that transit, it's a transit corridor, it's a fish corridor, it's a wildlife corridor, it's a people corridor. And I think we need to sort of sit down and think about all the actions that have been proposed and how best to coordinate, because I know they're all expensive, and trying to plan them in a coherent and unified way, I think, is more efficient and less costly. I grew up on the East Coast, and one of the visions on the city news was this city street in New York, and they were just finishing asphalting one end of the street, and at the other end they were starting to dig it up, and they were working on different contracts. And I know that doesn't happen here, but that's the sort of fears that we don't want to improve the street and then have to move it for the stream, I guess is all I'm saying. And I will yield you back 27 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy Benishinsky.
Tracy Benishinsky, Kenmore. Good evening, Council. I am here tonight to talk about Climate Action Plan funding and a proposed new parking lot, First Climate. Each month since June 2023 has ranked as the hottest on record compared with that month in previous years. And for the first time, according to the EU's climate service, global warming has exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels across an entire 12-month period. Technically, the 1.5 degrees Celsius target world leaders pledged not to exceed in 2015 has not yet been missed, as it refers to an average global temperature over decades. But some scientists have said the goal can no longer realistically be met and have urged governments to cut emissions faster to limit overshoot of that target. To that point, I would like to talk about CAP funding. In early 2023, Council selected a steps approach to funding our climate action plan. Initial funding hired a climate action plan program manager to get the easiest, least expensive work for the plan started and to raise additional funds through grant writing. I am incredibly grateful for Nina and the climate work she has accomplished so far. She's a great climate action plan program manager. At the same time, my thoughts on CAP funding have not changed over the past year. I believe that we need a fully funded plan that involves stable, reliable, certain sources of income. I love grants. I work for a salmon recovery nonprofit whose projects are almost entirely funded by grants. We can indeed do brilliant things with grant money, and we absolutely should. But we should not leave critical climate work to funding from agencies that are often directed by the political whims of the administration in power, and that even if leadership is favorable, are highly competitive. At my job, if we don't get grant funding for a project, we don't do it. We can't afford not to do this climate work. I hope that Council will revisit our approach to funding CAP. I'm interested in the possibility of a ballot measure that would allow us to move faster and do more to stabilize our climate and secure a livable future on this planet. Second, the proposed new parking lot. The city has passed SEPA review for park development at Twin Springs that includes a new parking lot and other hardscapes. I hope that at least one of you will look into this and champion the cause of not building new parking lots in a natural area full of environmentally sensitive ecosystems. In a community that is moving in the Strong Towns direction of minimizing parking and finding ways to improve pedestrian and bike access to city amenities by designing streets for people and not for cars, I know we can do better than a new parking lot in a green space. Thank you so much, as always, for your leadership and your service to our community. I appreciate you all so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This concludes our on-site speakers list. May we move on to virtual?
Of course.
We have one person wishing to speak, Stacy Valenzuela. Stacy, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Thank you. I support each and every person that spoke tonight, and I hope you hear what they're saying in regards to these causes, because we come to you because we care so very much. I forwarded articles concerning the dark practices at the manufactured home senior communities. We need our city to be part of the solution for this too, and keep residents healthy and housed. joining several organizations, representatives, senators supporting rent stabilization, protection, and preservations of our extremely low affordable housing in our communities. The facts are that soon a lot of people will be forced out of their homes with the increases that are coming between June and September. We also need to know, is Kenmore really financially sustainable when we continually see taxpayer dollars wasted in staff direction, no cutback on extras from the departments, blame placed on the council for unclear directions? Even the started need for a public works equipment facility is missing the mark by not even providing for the priority of equipment, as well as the way above budget. Residents brought forward the opportunity of an alternative low fraction of the cost, but a great match of criteria available at the old firehouse that was left out of the review. The need for council to review each and every project for instances of over budget is so high. When will the excuses end? We see direction from upper staff to employees prior to council adoption or public hearings, then they cry that they already started the work to try to persuade to continue in that area. We still see hiring of outside contractors while other departments are capable of doing the work. Please dig deep to follow the will of the people, the residents of Kenmore, and budget the staff. Review and reach out to Mercy Housing with Bastyr University partnership. What even happened to where that RFP was not even submitted or reviewed? Please, we need you to review, and we need the wishes of the will of the people to come forward. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mayor. That concludes our speakers signed up to speak.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is our consent agenda. Chair to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda stands approved. Next, I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy City Manager for a presentation.
Well, this one is bittersweet, this presentation tonight. We're celebrating Janet Quinn, who has been with the city for 8 years, but as we all know, anyone who knows Janet knows that that's just the tip of the iceberg of her contributions to Kenmore. She served on the school board. She's been a PTA president and co-president. She has given to this community deeply and fully for decades. And we're so grateful that we got to spend the last 8 years with her at the city of Kenmore. Jan has been part of my journey since one of my first days on the job with the American Rescue Plan Act funds. She immediately saw this opportunity, and she and I forged a close partnership as we did Kenmore Cares and the business assistance. And she has been instrumental behind the scenes on so many things that we've done. As a city, one of my greatest sadnesses, I think, Janet, is the work that we had planned for the rest of this year that we won't get to do, some economic development activities that we won't get to do, but she's retiring and we are happy for her, but we're feeling bittersweet. I asked Janet, I said, what are some of the things that you're most proud of at the city? And she talked about the connections that she's made, her support of the business community. She talked about something that I wasn't here for, but the Integrated Aquatic Vegetation Management Plan. She mentioned was a highlight, that she was an author of that and helped create that work and has watched it bloom. She worked in engineering and supported the engineering department, and she really enjoyed her connections and partnership there. And she's one of the people who always edits the newsletter. So if there are no typos, we can thank Janet, because she's often behind the scenes editing, reviewing things. She's a strategic thinker. She's someone who is just always thinking ahead and cares deeply about our businesses, the community, and how to make things better. And so she's irreplaceable, but we're so grateful for all of her contributions. So we have a gift for Janet, and I'm going to read you what it says. It's a clock and a plaque, and it says, "In your 8 years with the city of Kenmore, you have made an undeniable difference. Your hard work, dedication, and achievements are truly timeless." And it has a clock. Congratulations on your retirement. So with bittersweet feelings and deep connection. I'm grateful that you live in Kenmore and you're not really, I keep telling Janet, can you open a business so then you can be part of the KBA, but she doesn't seem to want to do that yet. I'm not going to give up on that because that's one of my dreams, that you become a business owner in Kenmore. But I want to give this to you and give Janet a few minutes to say a few things and be recognized.
Thank you, Council. Bittersweet for me as well. Wow, my heart is really full. It has been an amazing honor and privilege to serve my community in this way. And it's felt like, I don't know, I appreciate Rob for making this opportunity available and making me aware of this opportunity. And it almost feels ridiculous that I'm getting paid for work that I love so much. So, so thank you for this opportunity. But I have to, because authenticity is really important to me, I feel like I have to share why I'm leaving now. And it goes back to Plymouth and your response to Plymouth. And I'm not going to dwell on that because I know how hard your job is. But I do want to say that you have an extraordinary staff here at Kenmore. My colleagues are unmatched. They're an unbelievable team. And I don't know if you know how much they passionately throw themselves into work that you ask for and that you require. You make a list of priorities and staff throws themselves into delivering that. And when it's not supported or backed, it feels like the rug is pulled out from under us, and it feels like we don't know. Actually, I can't speak for anyone else. It feels like I don't know what you want and what we can do to deliver, and whether or not the project is going to be supported when we bring it to you. So I wouldn't be honest if I didn't share that with you. But I'll leave that there and say that, again, I am so appreciative of this opportunity. It has been such an honor, and I hope to see all of you and everyone in the audience and my fellow residents in Kenmore regularly in this city that I love. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Janet, can we get a photo with the council? That brings us to our business agenda. Item A, 61st Avenue Northeast Sidewalk Replacement Project, preliminary 30% design update, presented by Engineering Director John Vicente, Senior Civil Engineer Kent Vaughn, KPFF Engineer Nathan Anderson, and Consulting Arborist, Urban Forester Elizabeth Walker, for discussion and approval.
Just a reminder, everyone, please use your microphones if you're speaking.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here to talk about our favorite subject, 61st Sidewalk Replacement Phase 1, 30% design. So we're going to run you through what we've concluded, our design for 30% is, and we're also going to request an additional appropriation of funds to complete the project. As mentioned, we have John Vicente, City Engineer, Engineering Director here, as well as Nathan Anderson from KPFF, who's the Project Manager, and Elizabeth Walker, who is our Consulting Arborist, Urban Forester, and what we designate as our Tree Expert. So let's get started. Just as a refresher, the Phase 1 project goes from 190th Street to the north city limits. And the original scope was basically to replace selective sidewalk panels where they were uplifted by the tree roots of the street trees. On the east side only, so the Phase 1 was east side only, and removing and replacing the existing street trees with new trees with root barrier to prevent that from happening in the future. There would be designated bike lanes with the removal of the existing right turn lanes and on-street parking. There were some intersection improvements at 193rd and 60th for curb extensions, which would shorten the pedestrian crossings across those streets. We also are going to be adding pedestrian crosswalks with RRFB flashing beacons at 193rd and 60th crossing 61st. So safety improvement for peds to get across. We are adding 3 speed feedback signs for a little bit of traffic calming along the corridor, and an asphalt overlay, which is funded through our city asphalt overlay program, separate from the project budget. Back in November of 2023, staff presented a series of alternatives, design alternatives, to consider in developing the 30% design. There was 5 alternatives. One alternative was staying the course and removing and replacing the existing trees and replacing the sidewalk panels. Another option was to bridge over the tree roots. Third option was to realign the sidewalk and bridge combination. We had a 4th alternative, which was relocating the sidewalk further away from the street trees and potentially acquiring right of way to do so. And the 5th alternative that we presented was filling over the tree roots and replacing the sidewalk in the same location. We also presented feedback from the public. So we went out to get some feedback from the public on our alternatives, and we had an online open house and we presented those findings to you. At that meeting, it was concluded that we revised the project scope to save as many trees as possible by realigning the sidewalk or bridging and removing and replacing existing trees only when absolutely necessary. Also, with that meeting, we agreed that we'd come back at 30% and we'd show you the design to get your buy-in on the design, and also approve the appropriation of funds that will be required to complete the project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nathan. Walk us through the design here. You're able to zoom in, is that right? I don't think we can.
Okay, that's okay. So hi, I'm Nathan Anderson, KPFF, the design manager. So you're seeing 61st here, of course. North is to the right. The limit on the south side, which is the left side of the page, there is 190th. If you look at the legend briefly, we have several things there, several symbols. So there's red X's. Those are the trees that we really think just have to be removed. And that could be due to just where we visually see critical routes. There's just no way to get sidewalk anywhere near it without severing quite a few critical routes. And it could also be just poor quality. So those we think are highly likely that they'll just need to come out. The orange X's are trees we're just not sure about. We have some thought that maybe there are some critical routes under there in certain areas where we want to put the sidewalk, and that it might end up requiring removal. We won't know more about those trees until we get into construction and start to excavate some of the soil around them to really see kind of where those roots go. And then finally, we have new tree locations. So we will be planting new trees where there's available space, and we've shown those here on this plan. So to summarize, before we go through it, this current plan, we think for sure there's going to be 9 tree removals. There's 11 trees that are at risk, and then potentially 26 new trees could be planted.
I'll add, when you're seeing this design, you're seeing the sidewalks on both sides of the street. The phase 1 only has the east side sidewalk, so the lower portion of the sidewalk. The sidewalk on the upper side, that's part of phase 2 project, which includes improvements from 182nd Street to 190th Street, but it also includes the west sidewalk in the phase 1 city limit. So it's a little bit confusing there, but it is funded by Connecting Washington funds, and those will be available next year. But the project, the construction of that west sidewalk currently is at best 2028.
You mind if I see the mouse just to point? All right, so I'm going to start on the south side here, the left.
Do you want us to hold questions, or are you okay taking questions as we
We
go?
could do it either way. We can go through the presentation, or you could just fire away. We're fine.
Yeah, sure. Okay. That's good. Let's get to the presentation.
Okay, so starting on the south side here, currently this sidewalk is right up next to the right side of the trees as you're proceeding north. We do have quite a bit of right-of-way space here, and replacing the sidewalk here would not work. It would kill many of the trees. So our proposal in this area is to shift the sidewalk approximately 6 feet to the east to get it further away from the existing trees. But not too close to the nice screening trees that are currently on city property, but right at the back of the right of way. So that's currently here on this east side. You'll notice the rechannelization of the roadway, adding bike lanes. As we proceed further north, there are a couple trees that, we just really don't think we can save because of visually what we can see on the surface with the critical roots. This is the former slip lane that's now closed. We are currently almost completed a traffic study. It's nearly complete. That we believe we are going to end up needing a left turn here. So that's what we're showing. We also propose new sidewalk to connect this crosswalk to the existing sidewalk further to the south. So at this intersection, we would have curb bulb extensions. So that's where you have a wider sidewalk. The curb kind of swoops out into the roadway. Narrows down the lanes, and you have more maneuvering space for pedestrians. That also provides shorter crosswalk lengths. And this is where we see our first RRFB, so that's the flashing beacon crossing signs, and that's to get across 61st Avenue. So moving further north, we kind of change how we're dealing with sparing some of the trees. I can't zoom in, but right now the sidewalk is again on the east side of the trees, and pushing it further to the east. We do have some right-of-way space, but there is a nice row of evergreen screening trees back here that we think most likely those would have to be really trimmed quite heavily to make space just to walk under them. In addition, the grade kind of drops off here, so you'd likely have some sort of thickened edge, potentially a wall to make up for that grade. So then we started looking at moving the sidewalk to the west side of these trees. So that's between the existing trees and the roadway. And we actually think that's a better option. So this would be new curb line that's shifted basically into where currently there's street parking. And then you would have sidewalk in that same area. And then you would have the existing trees to the right of that. And Elizabeth, do you want to talk about why we think that's a better option for maintaining trees in this area?
Yes. So the fortunate thing about the growth of the existing red maples is that majority of the root systems are going eastward. So they're going away from the existing curb line. Fortunately, we do not see any damage to the existing curb line, nor any excessive roots that are intruding into that area. So the location of this section of the sidewalk in which it is on the west side of these trees, it's actually a bit further out from the existing curb. And the theory is that existing curb is acting as a root barrier in and of itself, being deep enough and curbing the root growth. So we're just going to keep that in place to be continue as a root barrier, and then build the sidewalk from that toward the center of the road.
Well, we do think that's a higher likelihood of sparing a majority of these trees. It doesn't provide that buffer space between pedestrians and roadway. So that's just something to note there. So as we move further north, these 4 orange X's, those are trees where there's currently a little curb bulb that comes out. So there's, you know, nice soil on both sides of the tree. So most likely those roots have kind of spread in all directions. So it's just unknown at this point if constructing sidewalk right there would sever enough roots to kill the tree. So we've marked these as at risk. Very similar scenario on the west side of the road. Again, moving that sidewalk currently where there's parking areas and keeping that existing curb as it braces up those up against the root bulb and just filling on top of it. Moving further north, again, just a few trees we don't think we can spare. Sidewalk is still adjacent to the roadway on the opposite side of the trees where it currently is today. And then we get to 60th Avenue. We have a lot of opportunity space here. So we're proposing to plant some trees around here. I believe there might be some stormwater plans as well as a different project, but we still think we can fit in some trees there. And now we have another area where we're proposing curb bulbs and extensions. So again, more pedestrian maneuvering space, RRFB crossing of 61st Avenue. And let's see here, continuing north. Yeah, we have we would like to get more space here on this west side, north of the intersection, but there is a critical area with that stream there. We really can't fill in any of this area, so we've pushed things further into the road. Small planter area, but probably not big enough for trees, but ground cover.
And that stream along the phase 1 limits is not adjacent to the roadway. You can see on both sides that it kind of goes away from the roadway and then comes back. And further south of 190th, where phase 2 is happening, is where that project is going to be helping the stream, moving the sidewalk into the roadway and providing a better buffer, but phase 1 is not, so.
So moving further north, very similar sidewalk next to the roadway with the trees behind it, a few at-risk trees. And then as we get closer to 197th, there is some space, we think, to shift that back, potentially plant some new trees adjacent to the curb. And then we kind of reverse that here once we get to 197th. Again, a new curb return, most likely with ramp at this corner. Further north, there is more project included in this one. But really, it's less about tree retention because there's fewer at risk, there's fewer trees in general. This is more about just sidewalk panel replacement, rechannelization to get the bike lanes in there, and then potentially creating some space for new plantings in the existing curb bulbs.
And this is more representative of what the original scope was, replacing selective panels and removing and replacing trees. So it's not a continuous sidewalk improvement, it's targeted. So with that, As I mentioned previously, there's an appropriation of funds that is needed to complete the east sidewalk. We have roughly $2.1 million available, and our engineers estimate 30% with a 25% contingency is roughly 3.3 million. Also shown up there is if we were to do both sides, what the amount of money that we would need for that is. To fund that 1.2 million, we're proposing to use transportation capital funds of 700,000 and 520,000 of REIT funds. But we do intend this summer to apply for TIB funds to supplant that money. And we also intend to apply for a grant to accelerate the west side. So if everything happened, if everything worked great and we got the grants, we'd know in November if we were successful, and the money would be available January 1st, 2025. And we would include the west sidewalk in the phase 1 construction, which is what's desired, not to revisit this location twice in the span of 3 years. Again, construction planned for 2025. What you didn't see in the layout was bridging. So we looked at bridging. We haven't had very much success with the bridging on 73rd. It was very expensive. We had constructability issues, and it's not wheelchair friendly, and it has maintenance associated with it. So we left that out. We're requesting that you accept the preliminary design and appropriate the additional funds, and we're open for questions.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Thanks. This was a really good presentation, and I appreciate the one-on-ones that we had earlier, a couple, 3-4 weeks ago, something like that. Can you say a little bit about how many trees are retained? I see the X's and then the new, but I don't see designation of how many are retained.
There was 60, I think there were 65 red maples.
Yeah.
We're proposing to remove 9 of them. So.
Oh, okay. So quite a few are being retained. I mean, I can't tell on this graphic, but yeah.
Yeah, there's unfortunately, we can't zoom in, but yeah, there's roughly 65.
There are some, yeah, the dark circles are intended to be the crown of the canopy of the existing tree. So, yeah.
Oh, okay, because it looks like that's the new tree location designation, sorry. Okay, and then I have 2 other little questions. Can you speak a little bit to the drought tolerance of the trees and landscaping that you're proposing? We've heard from some people that it may not be, and I just want to kind of gauge how you're understanding that.
Elizabeth?
Well, I've been working on putting together a list of trees, depending on the location of where we need to do some new plantings. So that absolutely takes into consideration, especially when this is not an irrigated landscape.
Yeah, right.
So we're going to have to do the gators or whatever supplemental watering during establishment. And so it's always important to make sure you do have drought tolerant species, as well as we're doing a lot of research around what are climate ready trees. So it's not just about the drought, but actually sustaining temperatures and the shifting of the microclimate. So we do have that list, and it also depends on the space that's available. And we do want to avoid, we are having any sort of overhead conflict, with overhead utilities for that, to prevent what has to be done by the PSC and others in order to maintain or provide reliable service. So those are all taken into consideration, above ground as well as below ground. So the width.
And does that extend not just to the trees, but to what would be on the ground around the trees, that kind of analysis, ground covers? small plantings. I assume we're considering those as well, right? Or would it, are we not doing
I think we're
anything
just doing.
around them?
Yeah, we're just, we're leaving the existing condition, which is grass, essentially. We're not doing
Oh, okay.
plantings. We don't have funding for irrigation system.
Okay, so
when
it's just, yeah.
Maintaining the existing
condition.
trees, planting new trees, and when the contractor plants the new trees, there's a 1-year establishment period where they're responsible for the health of the tree and watering it. And then at that point, our crews will take over until, there's no need for it.
Great. Okay, and the last question, was a roundabout considered? I mean, I know that's the wrong side of the street at this point, but I mean, in terms of, thinking about the west side as you're moving with the, into the next phase of this, phase 2, was a roundabout considered, and, how was it considered?
John, do you want to field that?
So we have been looking at options for a roundabout at that intersection. We've actually in the past applied for grants for that intersection, and we've been unsuccessful. It's just not a competitive location for the grant funds or grant sources that are available. We're estimating the costs $3 to $4 million just to build that, and we don't have local money to build such a thing. But we have put a roundabout in our comprehensive plan as something that we want to build within the next 20 years, depending upon how funding comes about. At this point, I don't know of any grant funds sources that would pay for this. We were possibly looking at maybe trying to bank some CAPE money. And then once we had enough in there, use that to build something. But again, it's far too costly for the funds that we have available, given the projects we have on the books and how much money we actually can bring in each year through our other REIT and TBD and that sort of thing. So it has been considered. We just don't have the funding for it.
Councilor Lutzis.
Just to follow up on that, with this current plan and where it is, does this allow us the flexibility to more easily, I guess, insert a roundabout when the funds become available?
Unfortunately, based off of where a roundabout would best fit, we would have to rip everything back out again. There's no way to design this to accommodate a roundabout. We might as well just build a roundabout at that point. So
another follow-up question this time on towards the north end, that last intersection there, 62nd Avenue Northeast and 61st Place. Now, I believe that crosswalk was redone recently, more recently, is that correct? I know when we went on site visit, they had the indicators there and it was a recently redone.
Which one are you referring to? I think he's talking.
That one, that's correct, yeah.
But that's 197th.
Oh, 197th, excuse me, I'm looking at the map incorrectly here. Was that the one, when we went on our site visit, the one that had been recently replaced?
I thought this one was fairly new, right?
Yeah, I think it was a new
In the
one.
last 5 years or so.
I'm drawing a blank. John, do you know?
It's possible. So PSC came through and did a lot of work this area. They undergrounded their utilities and replaced certain curb ramps. And I don't recall if that was one of the locations that they had done some work.
Is there not?
I don't think, is there an RFP?
Oh,
I believe there is an indicator there, yeah.
is there?
Yeah.
Well, we're not proposing to make any
Yeah, we're
changes
to that.
on the-
Okay.
Yeah, no changes are proposed there. We're just going to be
Okay.
freshening up the area. That one curb bulb extension on the south side
South side.
will be replaced just to make the crossing shorter, but there's not going to
Great.
be any fundamental changes to that area.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure we weren't redoing something that was just redone. And then the last question I have is for our arborist here, and that has to do with the trees at risk. Specifically, there's been comment made by the public about conducting a ground analysis of tree root growth and looking at subgrade soils. And essentially what you're saying right now with this at-risk designation is that sort of analysis would be done once construction commences. Is that correct?
Yeah, so majority of the trees that we have with the gold or yellow, orange, whatever X's, they are at locations where there is a bulb out. So we are assuming and we can visually see surface roots occurring in that extra space. And so that's why we're anticipating that there's going to be a number of routes that will be encountered once we expose that in order to install the sidewalk and then infrastructure. This is not, did not do a below ground analysis of at-risk for the roots systems. These are red maples that have aggressive root systems. This was definitely a poor choice for street trees. That was done by someone else, right? And so they do have aggressive root systems. And so that's why allowing the growth to continue where the sidewalks are now, that should allay any sort of intrusion or issues, but no guarantees. So.
So when we're at the construction, there's going to be root pruning required to install that sidewalk at those locations. And we'll likely bring Elizabeth out to look at that during construction to see what roots need to be cut and what happens with that tree as a result.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of looking at the percentage of roots being removed for that placement. And it's more about the stability or increasing the risk of the tree to fail.
Yet this plan proposed here is the plan that would give us the best chance of saving those trees.
This is what we're just indicating which trees we will be doing that work of root pruning. So we're just putting those on the spot.
And we looked at many options, and yeah, we do believe this gives you the best chance at retaining the most trees.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
I have a few questions, and I'll have to probably take them one at a time. So the first question is, and I think it may be a two-parter. How has the climate action plan been embedded into the planning efforts for this project?
So I would say the effort in trying to retain the trees in itself is within the climate action plan. And so we're making every effort we can to keep as many trees as possible. And then also, as Elizabeth said, looking at what trees would be appropriate to take into account what's happening with our climate. So the only option we really have with the funding that we have would be to preserve as many trees as we possibly can with the plan that we're proposing. We're not really seeing any other alternatives that we can preserve more trees unless we want to start buying property.
I think I think you answered my question more fully than what I had intended, because it'd be my expectation that the approach that staff has taken has been including the climate action plan. Preservation of trees is clearly a part of that. I think an incredibly important part of the climate action plan is making sure that any project that is making such a substantial effort at retaining trees and being mindful of the environment is clearly communicated to our community. I think it's incredibly important that there's no ambiguity there, because I see a direct relationship here. And so I'm not being critical here. I'm just, because community members may have question about this, I think it's incredibly important that we're very clear about what we are doing environmentally here. Because when I think climate action plan, the place that I go first, I'm not like my vision is, and I'm been very clear about this, environmental stewardship is my top tier of climate action. So, and I think for many people. So you answered that question for me. I just needed to hear it. And I wanted to say, as we do this work, because guess what? We're here. I know we've done a lot of community outreach over the past 2 years in particular. We've done surveys. We've had an open house. But here's what I know. Once we start this work, we're going to be hearing from our community, and they need to know how mindful we've been. So I just want to call clear attention to that. There were questions about impacts of things that are related, in my view, to climate action, which are the culverts in the stream. How will this work impact our future planning for 0056 and the culvert work that we have to do there?
This project will have no impact on that upcoming project. The stream itself doesn't really come into contact with 61st until south of where our project ends. The new project that's going to come here soon is going to start, I want to say maybe 100 to 150 feet south of 190th, past that culvert that you don't see that's buried in the hillside. From that point south is where we're going to be picking up the next project.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that location. It's right by my house and I stare at it every day. So I'm really looking forward to that. But so as we're doing this work, we're being mindful of the streams and all of that. So I think you answered that to my satisfaction.
The southern limits of this project, the culvert was recently replaced with a fish passable culvert, and we're tying into those improvements. But the stream further south parallels the sidewalk the whole way, and that's the component of providing a better buffer and moving the sidewalk into the roadway, and that's that project. So
Yeah, and I just want to be clear. So that is separate from this project. I think it's really important too that we talk about that. But there is actually a comprehensive plan for all of 61st that we're looking at. But we are looking at this segment that you're presenting before us today. And if we have funding concerns, right? Or we need to make a decision on what we're going to do.
Yes.
Okay. Let me just check my notes. I just want to make sure I asked my questions. I think I'm in pretty good shape. Some of this at 30% design, ideas about plantings and those sorts of things, or rain gardens and potential parks, those would be down the line to incorporate, or those need to be all known and identified now? Say if we're to put a rain garden in or a stormwater in that 193rd area, is what I'm thinking, where we're taking out that cutaway.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a
Lane.
potential of putting something there. It just depends on what the underlying soils might be. So we're definitely going to be looking at where we have opportunities, but at this point, it's really hard to say until we dig deeper. It's not likely we can do anything where the existing trees are, just because there isn't enough space there to put anything or work with anything there. So that open space would be our best opportunity if it was compatible. Again, there's also budgetary constraints as well too.
With this project, moving the sidewalk into the actual roadway, which is currently impervious, we're reducing the impervious surfaces along by removing the existing sidewalks.
Pollution generating surface goes down. Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to say, I'm so impressed with the design of the sidewalks, the way that you've moved them to save the trees. It's better than what I was expecting to see when I saw this plan. You've done a really outstanding job at doing what you can to save the trees. This is a really important project. It's also very, it's a tough project because of the beauty of those trees and the love that our community has. So anyway, it's a really, for me, as someone who loves, I mean, I know we all do, but I think that you've really gone about as far as you can to make this as good as you could for as many trees as possible. So I want to thank you.
Deputy City Manager, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to add something that Deputy Mayor Kane was saying, and also John Vicente, that it is climate friendly to add more sidewalks and walkability. That's consistent with the climate action plan. So I just want to be like, I think we said it, but sort of different ways.
Yeah, and the bike lanes, it's.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Councilmember Culver?
Yeah, I have a question about the trees and the point we were raising about maintenance and PSE and getting up into the electrical cables and that kind of stuff. Let me frame my question also. A few people have raised the prospect of like enjoying that kind of big, fuller, taller, I guess, bigger tree, right? And kind of the shade that it offers, et cetera. And my understanding is that typically the trees that we would choose as a replacement are smaller, right? More constrained and less in terms of maintenance. So I wonder, like, it sounds like there's maybe some less than excitement about maintaining bigger trees from PSE. Do we have any idea what that would cost if we wanted to take that on? That's a big question, but yeah.
So I can address the one question about PSE and trees. If trees interfere with PSE lines, we're not allowed to get close to their lines. They have specific contractors that are authorized to do it. We have to get permission from PSC to get within 10 feet of their line. So we would not be able to maintain those trees if we wanted to.
Gotcha. Okay, super helpful. Thank you so much. Building on that also, and I guess getting back to this roundabout question, which I heard several comments on, we've heard it from the dais too. This is super abstract, but like, do you have any idea like what a time frame might look like if we go like the Cape route? Like I hear you that we're not going to be competitive on the grants front, but like, is there any rough expected timeline? Like, would that be 5, 10 years out? Like any ballpark on that?
It's hard for me to say. There will be a presentation brought to council June 24th to talk more about CAPE. And really what it comes down to is what our overall policy is going to be and how we use those CAPE funds. So depending upon what the direction is, will depend upon how long it might take for us to bank enough money to build something there. But again, also too, we've got a substantial list of safety projects that we'd like to do. So we also would want to prioritize those lists and do what we feel is highest priority and work our way down. So very convoluted. Once we approach council with the new CAPE proposal, and once we get approval on that, we'll then look at how we want to manage the funds under the CAPE program. So.
Gotcha. Okay. And obviously that was, I think, pretty well beloved by the task force and council alike, sounds like. So that's, you know, I think we've given some thumbs up on that front. With that, I will stop. Thank you all.
Councilmember Sassen.
Thank you. I think this is an impressive evolution over the many months from when you were first presenting this project. And I'm grateful for that. We have a rich community with a wealth of expertise who have been actively providing us with input. And I'm hoping to just reiterate a couple of those points for my own clarity and understanding. Specifically, we've had a request for a larger vision articulating the cohesive plan for the street and the stream. And my understanding is that that is going to take place not just with this project, but with the interface between where this project ends and WashDOT picks up. And I just want to make sure that there is some kind of cohesive plan in your minds that you could maybe put in my mind.
So there's several things going on there.
Yeah.
Of course, this project we're proposing to council, which terminates at 190th. Then we have our upcoming project, which we're crossing our fingers that we get the funding next year. It's supposed to happen this year, but stuff happens.
That's phase 2.
Yeah, phase 2, which is going to deal with.
So east side, west side, north end.
So on this particular one, it's east side, and then north of 190th. The phase 2 portion would be west side sidewalk, and then the stream buffer increasing, moving the sidewalk. But that portion of the project is going to end somewhere where you might think 182nd comes through. If you're familiar with 61st, it's the last house before you reach 181st. That's about where this project ends. WashDOT's culvert replacement's at 522, so there's a big gap in between. We have replaced a culvert already north of 181st, but there'll still be that piece where between 181st and Jack in the Box that will not be replaced, because that's WashDOT is not replacing that, and it's on private property, so it's a little complicated. But the efforts that we're doing are independent of what WashDOT is doing, because they're really too far apart to have to worry about coordination in that effort. We are coordinating with them on other issues around the Bergillman Trail and the stream issues in that area. So that's where the coordination with.
So we may have a wish list for that gap or a wish vision for that gap, but we do not have a solution, and it's not in our hands because it's private property.
And I don't know the answer to that. Richard, sorry, would have a better idea because he did the culvert assessment, and I don't know if that culvert is within his plan and if it's earmarked for any time for replacement. I just don't know the answer to that one.
I'd look forward to that answer if you could help us find that. I do have a couple more questions. Is that all right? So again, just the more often we can articulate the larger vision and the cohesive plan, the better for ourselves and our constituents here. What else did I want to say? You addressed the cost of the roundabout. I'm assuming that you've had input on the issue of displacing on-street parking. I think it's a great plan, but I imagine there's been some pushback from the community, and I just wanted to make comment on that.
And I don't recall much pushback. We approached council a few years ago about removing the on-street parking in lieu of putting in bike facilities. And we did an assessment of the use of it. And I believe we notified folks and we didn't really hear much about it, so.
Yeah, and my hope is that in narrowing that street and making it multimodal, we'll also be controlling speeds and therefore safety. Is that kind of in the direction we're going? Thank you. And then again, I'm very pleased with the prioritizing the multimodal aspect of this. And I'm hoping that we've had some professional and citizen input on the safety of the bike lanes that are going in. Because we have an active citizenry who are bikers who are concerned about how that will go.
And we're the plan that we're proposing is not allowing for bike lane buffers, I believe, throughout that
Yeah,
corridor.
we're squeezing this
Yeah.
improvement in between the trees. So we don't have bike buffers, but we're going to be putting in that profiled plastic line similar to 73rd. So if you veer off the lane, then you'll have kind of a rumble strip effect.
Yeah, the original proposal was to remove the trees, put sidewalk back, cut the curb back so we could provide a buffering for the cyclists. But with this new proposal, we had to remove the buffer to make room for the sidewalk to preserve the trees. One thing I did want to mention though, in regards to corridor planning, if council approves this plan, where we set the curb kind of takes into account what we would probably do maybe for a corridor plan. You really can't do much unless you want to rip all the trees out, because a corridor plan would require starting over from scratch. We're trying to preserve trees, and so doing a corridor plan wouldn't work in this situation because we'd have to tear the trees out. But if a time does come that all the trees they have to go, we have got a baseline curb, and then we could build back of that and create a corridor project if we wanted to at that time. But again, these trees, we don't know how long they're going to last. They could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years, who knows?
Sure.
Yeah, so.
And just following up on that point, I appreciate that you are, Elizabeth, choosing climate ready. You know that you have a list of climate ready trees. And my understanding is that the current trees are not hybrids and they were poorly chosen. I hear that. But I wanna make comment that I believe you shared with us in a different setting, how it is that you are gonna contain the roots, do improved root containment for the new trees.
Yeah, most likely, well, first of all, we're going to select the appropriate species that can fit in the space that is provided. Below ground, yeah, all directions. And I believe then there is going to be a spec to do a root barrier, install a root barrier at the sidewalk, at the back of the sidewalk in order to further prevent it. The other thing too is with this additional space that we're creating by eliminating that sidewalk behind the trees, we'll be able to position trees a little bit so that it's evenly distributed in that open space. So that therefore you could put a larger species in. Not all of this corridor has overhead utilities, so we don't have that constraint everywhere. So we will be able to appropriately select within the confines, the limitations.
I'm excited to see what you come up with. And then my last question, so forgive me. There has been some community concern about what is the urgency on this project. And I'm curious about that from the standpoint of funding and grant money and also safety and just our urban plan. So I wondered if you could speak to that, John.
So in terms of urgency, this has always been an urgent project. We don't have accessibility along this corridor. I've seen multiple people having to be in the street because they can't maneuver the sidewalks. And so there's just that general urgency right there. We need to get this taken care of as soon as we can so that the people who live in this community can actually use the facilities there instead of being decorative, for lack of a better word. And also, we do have the funding. We made an obligation to our state
WashDOT.
partners that WashDOT that we would have this thing built last year. And we are graded on how well we perform our projects, and our ability to get funding is impacted by that. If we are showing an inability to complete projects, we will not get awarded future funding. That's just how they determine who gets funding. Also, if we're not showing sufficient progress, they could take the money away from us. So we need to, that's part of the urgency as well, to get this thing done, because we have made a commitment to have it completed within a time period that we've already exceeded. So those are the two senses of urgency that I would share with you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions. Do we know what sort of trees we're looking at for replacement trees?
Maybe. Yes, we are. I'm looking at, do you want to know what kind of trees we're looking at?
I would love to know.
Yeah, I'm trying to maintain the fall red color in order to make continuity along the corridor. And I am looking at, there's an American hornbeam that is very, these will probably be more columnar than they will be broad. But there's the American hornbeam, which provides that fall color and are very, very easy to maintain. They have very few pests and diseases. Another is a Persian ironwood, which is also a very nice and hardy tree. That'll probably be of a bit smaller stature. And then would have, for those spaces that are tight where they're only 5 feet width, planting width, I would be going with a crabapple, a flowering crabapple that also has fall color.
And with the trees that are marked with the golden X's here, if some of them do have to be removed, or even for the ones that are being removed, is there a plan if we decide that we have to take out a few of the,
yes,
to replace them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so the new trees that you're seeing there is just with the removals that we have, the 9 removals. So we're nearly tripling the canopy in trees.
Okay, but we are planning on, if we have to take out the existing ones.
Yes, they may not
that are
be
different.
1 for 1.
Okay. And then my real concern with the current design, and yeah, I want to preface all this by saying that, when I was first running for office 10 years ago, I walked those streets, and a decade ago, they were a hazard for even an able-bodied person like me to walk down. And there's no excuse for us leaving those sidewalks the way they are. And it's both a hazard, but also it does get us further away from our goals of making Kenmore a place that folks can get around without needing to jump into a car, to be able to walk and bike. And so, but we were facing the tension between that and the corridor and the trees in the corridor, and how important those are to the community. And so I appreciate the creativity that went into this to kind of meet both of our goals in a creative way. My only real concern is just with the sidewalk being pushed out to be right on the road, against the roadway. And I do recognize that there's the bike lane kind of as a buffer. But from a safety standpoint, it concerns me just a little bit to have, pedestrians right there with 4 or 6 feet next to them for the bike lane. Is there any thought, and this may be completely infeasible, and if it is, you can tell me, that's fine. Is there any thought to maybe elevating the sidewalk, or just increasing the size of the curb or something in those areas, just to give a little bit more protection to pedestrians that are walking on those stretches?
Are you referring to raising the bike lane?
No, raising the sidewalk maybe a little bit, just to increase the curb height. I'm just worried about, a car out of control and jumping the curb. And usually there'd be a little bit of a buffer with a tree, which would usually stop the car. But here we're gonna have pedestrians directly on the road, or right next to the road, I should say.
I would say that we haven't really thought about that, but I mean, it's not something that we couldn't do.
I mean, it isn't something we couldn't do, but I mean, the higher the curb you go, the more likely you get some pretty bad ankle twisters. 6 inches isn't so bad, but if you start talking a foot, then if someone were to lose their balance, that could be a little bit more hazardous for them. We try to stay away from fall heights that are unnecessary. And I would not recommend that we would go with a higher curb there. A better option might be some sort of additional vertical option along the bike lane to keep the vehicles where they're at and to slow them down. I mean, another option is railing, but that's so expensive and there isn't a lot of space for that. And it's a tough choice. That's why we like having the plant buffer between sidewalk and roadway.
Is there enough space to, I've been having to drive down, what street was it? I think Jackson or Dearborn or something recently. And they've put in these bike lanes with this curb, protective curb that's probably yay high. It's bigger than a C curb.
Yeah.
Then that you just get extruded. But it's probably, I don't know, 12, 14 inches tall. It looks like it's modular and it looks like it's the same width, probably 4 inches wide. Is there room for us to put in something like that to protect the bike lane a little bit more and also at the same time protect pedestrians?
So one of the issues that you have with that type of curbing is you still need to have some clear space between the vehicle and the curb, and we just don't have the space for that clear space. Something like the vertical deflectors we have on 73rd, little plastic tubular things, those are okay because they can be hit without doing any significant damage to a vehicle. So that would be the thing that we would want to utilize to keep vehicles away from the bike lane to provide that extra discomfort for vehicles so they go slower and pay more attention to what they're doing. But they're just, we're tight for space. And again, this is the downside to this dilemma. We've got competing interests here and we don't have the space for it. And so we're really having to pick and choose, the lesser of two evils, or everything's going to have to give to provide something for everything.
We're right down to 10-foot lanes and 5-foot bike lanes, but
No, I appreciate that.
we can absolutely look at opportunities to see if we could add something like that. There can be expensive.
No, I appreciate that. It's just things I'm thinking about as we look at this. And I do appreciate the tensions that we've, pushed on staff with this, because if we had just said, do away with the trees and start from scratch, all of this would be a lot easier and we would be able to fit in a lot more there and not be as constrained. But, the community spoke and the council agreed that these trees are kind of an iconic piece of the city. And so we're, keeping as many of those as we can is important, which is forcing on us some compromises in this design. So I really do appreciate the work that's gone into kind of balancing all of that. Any other questions for staff? Councilmember Sassen?
I just want to reiterate that I do think, John, as many places as we could put those vertical deterrents for the bike lane, the better. I understand it's expensive, but it would be a priority.
We agree with that too. Internally, I think we still need to figure out the maintenance of the bike lanes and the sweeping and how because that becomes a barrier to get to the curb and there's debris that gets in there, but.
Yeah, with maintenance, if we want to keep the bike lanes free and clear and safe for cyclists, then our crews would have to go out by hand and clean that.
Yeah, they
And
go out
that's-
with blowers and it's manual. They
Yep.
can't use a sweeper when those barriers are put in.
Very labor intensive for our crews, the more we put those out. So we try and, we're putting them strategically at this point to see how they work. And then when it comes to future projects, we'll probably take the same stance and just strategically stick them where we feel that the profiled plastic is not keeping them out of the bike lane.
I mean, I would just toss out there, John, that I think if you were to ask the council for a bike lane sweeper, you probably would be able to find some support for that because they do exist and they can be pulled by one of the e-bikes we've purchased for staff. So that is an option. It is a tool in the toolbox that we could be using to address those sorts of concerns. Councilor Marshall, did I see your hand? No, okay. Councilor Lutzis.
Just a quick comment on that. But that discussion about putting in those posts or deterrence, vertical deterrence, that's something that we can have at a later date, but not, super critical at 30%, right? That's always something that can be put in after the fact.
Those can go in at any time during design, during construction, after construction. We're not limited on that particular product.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let me just go to my notes really quickly, sorry. There we go. All right, the chair would entertain a motion to accept the preliminary 30% design concept and authorize the city manager to appropriate additional city funds in the amount of 1.22 million to complete the project.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Councilor Marshall.
Oh, thank you for the great presentation and all your work on it, and thank my fellow council members and the public who's been involved in shaping this project and its evolution thus far. I know the council joins me in when I mentioned the previously unmentioned, but I'm sure absorbed idea of equity through this whole thing. I moved here in 2007 or back to Kenmore in 2007, and these sidewalks, when I tried to ride downtown on my bike, caused me to flip off. I wasn't paying attention, but I shouldn't have tried it. But I thought I could ride safely on the sidewalk, and I darn near bit it badly. I did bite it. Fortunately, was not injured. But that's a privileged, healthy, formerly young-ish guy. This sidewalk is the frontage of this sidewalk are the homes. The people that live there are in apartments. They're in one of the biggest multifamily, dense enclaves, in this part of town. And it's an equity issue. It really is. And I think that these are great questions for continued refinement of it. I love the mayor's suggestion of further protection for that sidewalk that comes up a bit close. We also see that somewhat on 68th, where the sidewalk is there on 68th, but these are great questions to think about it. But I think it still speaks to moving the project forward at this point, just in terms of equity. I saw today the gentleman who rides about in the little motorized cart. And he wasn't in the street today, but I've seen him before in the street against traffic. He has to go down there, but I saw him, he had made it further down to 61st. You can't take a wheelchair on that sidewalk. If you're got a walker or at all not sure-footed, you're not going to be able to make it. You can't do it. So I know the council joins me in getting this project moving forward, which is great. I mean, it supports density with a walkable community, the environment, as our deputy mayor emphasized, as everybody in the council emphasized, it's a great move forward. So I urge that we pass it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Hard to follow that. I think Councilmember Marshall covered almost everything that I wanted to, more than what I was going to say, actually. I really appreciate you bringing up the equity issue, Councilmember Marshall. These sidewalks are currently a hazard, and these trees are really beloved by our community. And as much as I would love to say every tree, I really am thankful for how you have come up with an approach where we are actually making compromises for the trees to preserve something, because they are valuable. Human lives are valuable. We all work together, and you've done something, I think, very creative. And ultimately, I think we're getting more trees out of it. I'm really thankful for that. I can say at the beginning, I thought I was going to vote no. I'm just going to say I was really not in alignment with removing any trees at the very beginning of this. So I'm very thankful for the thoughtful approach that you brought to this. And I'm looking forward to seeing the final results and completion of this project.
Any further comments? Yeah, I want to agree with what my colleagues have said, and I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. I think one of my biggest priorities from the beginning has always been, building a city that folks can safely walk and bike through. And this is a huge step in the right direction, because frankly, it was kind of insulting having these things that look like sidewalks that ended up not being safe for even me to walk down without having to really watch every step I was taking. And that's never the state that we should leave our just critical infrastructure in. And I view our sidewalks as critical infrastructure. So I'm glad that we're finally moving forward with this. I do really do sympathize with the comments we've gotten around a traffic circle. I remember the conversations that we had about those, 6-7 years ago, whenever that was. Maybe it wasn't that long ago, but it was a while back. And I was also blown away at the cost for doing that at that intersection. And as much as I think that's probably in the long run the right answer, I don't think it's worth putting off this project to let the good get in the way of, or let the perfect get in the way of the good. I'm excited about the changes that we're going to see here, even if it will be a little difficult for the next couple of years as we work through this. But I think this will be a huge improvement to the corridor for both safety, for accessibility, and for our climate. So I'm really excited about it. Any further comments? All right, seeing none, will the clerk please take the roll?
On the motion to accept the preliminary 30% design concept and authorize the city manager to appropriate additional city funds in the amount of 1.22 million to complete the project, Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Lutsis,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember Culver,
No.
Councilmember Sassen,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
There are 6 votes in favor and the motion passes.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, we have 2 staff reports. First staff report, Business Registration Program Update, presented by Deputy City Manager Stephanie Lukash and Administrative Specialist, Public Records Officer Teresa McAllister.
Good evening. We're happy to be here, Teresa and I, to talk about the business registration program. Go ahead, have you go to the next slide. So I just want to remind, we're going to do a little bit of a background on the business registration program for our community's benefit and why we have it and where we're going with requiring registration. So one of the first things when I took this job that was asked of me was, how many businesses are in Kenmore? And the thing that's been so interesting is we have never really entirely known, because we didn't require businesses to register. It was voluntary. And we hoped that businesses would register as a city endorsement on their business license with the state, but they weren't required to. So that's a key question that we're hoping to answer. How many businesses do we really have in Kenmore? And not only that, but we want to know a little bit more about them. How many are brick and mortar versus home-based? We know, and you'll see in a little bit, how many home-based businesses we have as far as we know as we get into this program. And then the other piece of it that we want to know, we have businesses who come to Kenmore who are not based here, but they operate here. They come to do business here, and those are called non-resident businesses. So we also want to know, how many of those do we have? So that's part of what we're exploring. And a key part of why Kenmore created this program in the first place was to connect with our businesses, to get to know them, to share information with them, to invite them to come to the Kenmore Business Alliance and all the other great business and economic development opportunities that happen in the city. So That's a big part of this too. And we collaborate with the KBA on our plan for using the dollars that we raise from the registration program. So the KBA is a committee of the chamber, the Kenmore Business Alliance. Anyone can come. You don't have to be a chamber member, but we hope that you're doing business in Kenmore, and that's why you're coming. And we have had such great growth of the KBA over the last few years. We get a great attendance. I know some of the council members have come. Anyone is welcome at any time. And then 2 years ago now, we instituted a strategic planning session in January where we said, okay, here are some ideas that came from the KBA about how we might use the business registration dollars, and we do a voting exercise, and that helps create transparency in the revenue. And we're making sure that the revenue that we're collecting, we're spending to benefit our local businesses on something that they find useful. And so it's been really fun to see the suggestions that have come up through that process. And so the new business directory that you heard recently a presentation on, that was funded. The first phase of that was funded by the business registration program. And then this year we have a new kiosk that will go at the hangar that we're going to be exploring and putting that in place. We're committing to a business registration program. We're going to do it in September this year with the KBA. So this presentation later this year. And we're supportive of so many things happening in Kenmore, like Oktoberfest this year is a business community generated idea that we're thrilled about and can use a lot of this work to support that kind of event. So just really quickly, so the changes that you all approved last year were to require registration of the program. So again, thank you for that. That will help us get a picture of who we have. And then it also required registration for non-resident businesses. And then as you remember, we did say if you make $12,000 or less in gross annual revenue, you're exempt from paying the $10 fee, but we do want you to register so we know who you are and we can contact you. And that happens through the Department of Revenue. And then there are certain exemptions that are listed there. Not every, if you're a minor or a school, university, church, farmer, government agency, you don't have to register. And it's $10 is what we've had since the beginning of the program. We didn't raise that amount because it's not really about raising revenue, but it's about having a sense of who our businesses are. And I guess we did want to say, sometimes people say, well, I paid it, and there is also an administrative fee. There is a fee the Department of Revenue charges. So it's $10 plus the administrative fee the state receives. Okay, so here we are. This is the exciting part. So as of the end of May, we ran some numbers for you. And again, this is the end of May. So we won't know for sure until we get all the way through the year, but you can compare to May last year. So last year we had 1,172 businesses registered. This year it's 1,660. And you can see the breakdown, about 1,200 are Kenmore businesses and almost 400 are non-resident businesses who are coming to Kenmore to do business. And then the pie chart is probably not surprising to anyone. We have a lot of home-based businesses in Kenmore. According to the current data where we are in the year right now, 67% of our businesses are home-based, 31% brick and mortar, and 2% nonprofit. This was really interesting. As we got into the self-reporting of revenue, you can see that 41% of our businesses self-report that they have a revenue below $12,000. So when you think about the $10 fee, that middle section of the chart, the 972 businesses would be required to pay the $10 fee. And then the other businesses are reporting revenue below that. We just think it's really interesting to find out more about our business community as we explore this program when we get into this work. And we'll look forward to continuing to learn about our community as we do this work throughout the year. All right, so revenue as of May. So there is about $4,666 has been collected so far through the program. And we're projecting based on that and based on the numbers we see between $11,000 and $12,000 in business registration revenue. It's typically been around $9,000, $8,000 to $10,000 in the past. So this is more than we have seen in the past, which makes sense because we're reaching out and we're registering everyone and more people are paying. We do notice in the system, there are over 300 Kenmore businesses without a business registration, but that have a business license. So this is also something that's really interesting to us as we get into this program. And so There is compliance auditing that it's a body of work to really track down each of those. There's research required. And I mean, some of these are maybe businesses that don't exist anymore. Some of them might have just not known about the program, maybe they're brand new. Well, there's a lot of research in this. And then where I just want to acknowledge that the program is Teresa and I. So we have limited staffing to do a full audit, but we know that that's something that we're curious about. And we'll be looking at that number throughout the year because we do need a full year of annual renewals to get the full picture. It's possible maybe some of those businesses are planning to register when they renew their license, but they're not due to do that until October this year, November. It happens on a monthly cycle. So we'll be happy to come back at the beginning of next year and give you the full picture. But we thought it'd be good to do this now, kind of almost halfway through the year, just to give you a sense of what we're seeing so far. And just to reiterate that these funds are used to support our local businesses. So another question we get a lot, how many sectors are represented in Kenmore's business community? And so I won't read them all, but you can see it's just, this is what we're seeing reported so far, and just a wide variety of business sectors in Kenmore.
Stephanie, if I may. Oh,
yeah.
Is this on?
It is.
I just wanted to mention on these are like the top 15 sectors. There are several more where there's maybe 3 or more business, or 3 up to 3 to 20 businesses that have reported additional business types. But these are the top ones. And this has been pretty consistent for the past few years.
So that's it. Like I said, we're happy to come back at the beginning of next year once we've got the full year under our belt, but just wanted you to see what we're seeing, and there's some interesting findings so far. Happy to take any questions that you have for us.
Councilmember Culver.
Yes, thank you all so much. Super happy to see this data. Super interesting to dig into. The biggest surprise for me, and you called it out, 41% of businesses self-reporting revenue under 12,000. I wrote some of this in, but just for everybody else, like, clearly that could be a potential source of, self-reporting bias. Okay, potentially. Let's assume though it's accurate, done in good faith, and fully understood that for some households in Kenmore, that income level could well be their full year, right? We know the statistics that's out there. That all said, I just wondered if you had any general impressions. Do you think that for businesses making under 12K, is that like side hustles and like folks stitching together a few incomes? Do you think that might be like semi-retired folks who need like maybe a smaller trickle of income? I know the data isn't going to clearly tell us, but like, do you have any impressions by chance?
So there isn't a way for us to really identify why zero is reported. Like it is a self-reporting field in the application form for a city license, as well as the renewal. So it's just a blank field and they enter the data. We have to do some research or some regulatory work in order to really make that determination. But out of all the home-based businesses that are $12,000 or under, there's about 20% that are reporting zero.
Gotcha, cool. Yeah, and yeah, the other fascinating thing, 2/3 of them, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, home-based, surprising. So anyway, immensely helpful, just a case study, I think, in why it's important to look into the data and understand this stuff better and get a little more precise. So thank you all so much, really appreciate it.
Councilor Lucis.
Yeah, thank you for this data. I think this will be very helpful for us to use in the future. And, I'm pretty sure the Kenmore Business Alliance appreciates this information, and although it's, small, the additional dollars to support businesses here in Kenmore. So thank you for this. I know it's a lot of work. And I just wanted to clarify, so that $12,000 threshold, that is just self-reporting. That's not audited or affirmed by state or federal licensing and things like that?
Well, this annual income that they're reporting for the business license is not the same as their other required reporting for tax to the Department of Revenue's tax division. So this is what they have filled out in their application form.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Sassen.
I'm curious if you have an update on the kiosk project.
Oh, yes, we are in the process of researching options. We want something that's durable because at the hangar, we know that there might be little hands that might be, touching it and that sort of thing. So we're probably, looking at one that's on the mid-range of price. And part of it too, there's a benefit to waiting because that'll help us know a little bit more as we get further in the year, how much revenue we will have to work with, because there were different estimates that we received. And we have a business owner working with us on doing that research. So we're hoping to have that decision made by the end of the year.
Any other questions?
And I think I said we're planning to give this presentation in September to the KBA. So that'll be a really fun opportunity. And we'll have, again, every month, we'll just have a little bit more information to round out this picture of who is our business community.
And we appreciate it. Thanks so much for all your work
Great.
and
Thank
all the
you.
good that's coming out of this.
Thank you.
Last but not least, special projects program update presented by Assistant to the City Manager Garrett Oppenheim and Management Analyst Janet Quinn.
Good evening. We're here to just give an update on the Special Projects Program, formerly known as ARPA.
Is your microphone on?
Can you not hear me?
Yeah, it's really quiet.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Sorry about that. As I was saying, we're here tonight to give an update on the Special Projects Program, formerly known as ARPA.
So we thought we'd start with kind of the history of the program, because not all of you were on council when it started, and there's really been a lot of work that's gone into it. So we'll start from the beginning. In June of 2021, we got the first half of the amount that Kenmore was allowed. And so 6.4 million was spread over 2 years, but it was a commitment. So we knew that it was going to be 6.4 million in total. And the city hired Stephanie Lukash to oversee the program. And she worked with council to come up with priorities and kind of guidelines for how the money should be spent and what the focus should be. And we have operated under those guidelines and since that time. So a lot of what you see that's taken place is because of Stephanie, to be honest. So, and then in October and November of 21, you probably remember that there were a lot of listening sessions that were held. Shannon Kelly Ray did one, and then we had the Balancing Act tool. So a lot of ways that we reached out to the community for input on what they wanted to see, what their needs and concerns were in the throes of the pandemic, and how we could help them recover. So August 22, Garrett and I came on board to oversee the projects that were that came out of those discussions. And then, if you recall, in January of this year, you all approved the ordinance 230601, which chose the revenue replacement option for reporting that expended all of the ARPA funds on government services, and it that money that was freed up through that, it was spent on police services. We put that into a special sub-fund of the general fund, but they're no longer ARPA funds, so that's why it's called special projects now. But you can see that a lot of time has passed, but really we're appreciative of council for the direction and the guidance and the heart that brought so much to the community in those early years.
Here on this slide, you can see the 5 different programs that the council has authorized using ARPA funds and special project funds. We're going to go more in depth on these over the next couple slides, but you can just see that the 5 are the Kenmore Cares Direct Cash Assistance, which was $1 million, the Homelessness Response Pilot Program, which was $50,000 for 2023, and then we extended it for another $18,000 for 2024. Human Services funding was $250,000. We have $100,000 in catch-up learning and childcare support. And then finally, $250,000 in business assistance that was split 65,000 in 2022 for urgent business assistance and 185,000 more last year for pandemic recovery assistance.
So direct cash assistance was the first program that you authorized and supported so many households, as you can see from this slide. And in an impactful way, it wasn't just a few dollars to a lot of people. You really targeted the people that were the most negatively impacted. And North Shore Schools Foundation was our partner in that, and they just hit the ground running and got out and knocked on doors and talked to people to find out who were the ones that were most impacted. And you can see the results: 412 households served and 789 individuals, which helped them through the pandemic.
So the other 4 programs were all authorized in May of 2022 together. The first of those that was put into effect was really the homelessness response pilot program. We've contracted with Lake City Partners, Ending Homelessness, this whole time. They have outreach specialists who started in March of 2023 and have been working here ever since. You can see some of the places that they work. They go to Camp United We Stand when it's here in town. They go to the community court in Shoreline and work as part of the resource center there. Every week they do office hours at the Kenmore Library, and we have some posters up at City Hall, at the library, at the hangar, so that folks know about that and what hours they'll be there. They give us bi-monthly reports that show us their engagement levels, and I can report to you that they have had exactly on the nose 150 engagements in that time with 41 different people here in the city of Kenmore. 2 chronically homeless people have gotten into housing, and I actually just found out at about 6:15 this evening that one lady who they met around Christmas last year had just lost housing in the last few months, was living on the streets. Only about a week and a half ago, we found out that she had been accepted into the Oaks in Shoreline, and just today she actually got housing through Plymouth Housing. So that's a real accomplishment that we're very excited about that. And as you can see here, the contract has been extended through the end of this year. So this good work will continue for a while longer now. We also have our $250,000 in human services. This has funded a number of different programs, the biggest of which is the Center for Human Services, which is offering counseling at, has been at Inglemoor High School this past year. It's going to be at Kenmore Middle School next year. They have had 23 clients enrolled in the program, so it's about 5 students a week that they see. You can see the services. They do outreach with the student body, collaborate with faculty, offer counseling to families and students, mental health assessments, and case management. And we've had the 2 smaller programs, which are the first aid kits, the Kenmore Cares mental health kits. We offer those at Kenmore City Hall here at the front desk. And we have also had them at events and over at the senior center. That's been very successful. We've given away a fair number of those, several dozen at this point. And then we've also been able to offer 2 mental health first aid trainings here at City Hall. Those are done in partnership with King County. They're free for anyone who lives or works in King County. And we've hosted those both with pretty good attendance.
Thank you for approving the second amendment to the contract for Cascadia College that will extend this program. This program has been surprisingly difficult, not difficult, but just has presented some challenges because it's a brand new program and a brand new model that that Cascadia College is rolling out. And the requirements for a partnership with the district, with school district, and with the city and Cascadia. It's a complicated, time-consuming process, and we are now starting to gather steam. So we added the option to earn college credits in the summer academy, which is obviously more attractive to students and more has a greater benefit to it. They're also adding some, so that'll be 2 summers instead of just one summer, this 2024 and 25. And then they're adding some mentoring at Inglemoor High School. They moved the program originally, if you recall, it was designed to be at Cascadia College. and they were going to provide busing, and it just was impractical for them. So they are now providing activity busing home for students that need it, but they are providing it. It's barely started this spring, but they are getting much more traction, and it will be up and running in the fall. And then honestly, business assistance has been the greatest pleasure to me personally. The best thing we did was interview businesses to understand better how their pandemic, how the pandemic was impacting them, because it was such a rich interchange. It built relationships, but it also provided us with information that we would not have had otherwise. And there's nothing like sitting down with someone one-on-one. So that was my favorite part of this particular program. But in 22, we did the urgent business assistance that was focused on brick and mortar businesses, and we awarded 6. And again, council wanted to make them meaningful amounts, so we awarded 6 grants. One was 15,000 and the rest were 10. And then 25 grants were awarded for the second round. And those were not limited to the brick and mortars. That was for home-based businesses and nonprofits. For the second round, we required documentation of some sort that was showing their pandemic impact. And the finance director reviewed all of those, and we offered grants based on a sliding scale based on their loss.
Before I address this slide, I actually want to take a step back and talk about the homelessness program again for a moment. The lady I was mentioning who's just been placed in housing, it wasn't actually Lake City Partners who first met her, because it was, I want to give credit to Jim Garrity, who he does a lot of work with the community. He was over at the hangar. He saw her day after day, and he was the first one to approach her actually and find out that, she was living on the streets, and he let me know. And then I was able to, send the Lake City Partners specialists out there to meet her and interact with her. So I think that he deserves an immense amount of credit for that. It really, really made a huge impact on her life. So I just wanted to make sure that I said that publicly here. So this slide here, the funding and expenditure recap. So as you can see, we had $6.4 million originally. 1.9 million of that has either been completed or allocated. That's to the different programs that we've talked about, as well as staffing related to overseeing and implementing these programs. $2.4 million is being reimbursed to the general fund for the purchase of the whole property. And that leaves $2.1 million to be allocated for future projects.
So future programming, we don't have any specifics for you tonight, but we continue to reflect on the themes that were generated during the outreach that we did, and keeping the guidelines and the original direction from council in mind. And we're batting around some ideas that came from those discussions, and we will present. I won't be presenting, but we collectively will present later this year, concurrent with the budget process. So stay tuned for more information on that.
That's all we had tonight. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Councilmember Shebnick.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for the presentation. I had a question about the CATSIP learning. We have one high school, right, and one middle school. Is there a reason that we couldn't have the opportunity at the school, like an after-school program? Was that considered, or?
Yeah, as I said, this has been a long process with this. We started by having conversation with the, I think it was the director of student services, nope, different title, Tracy Malloy, at the school district, and explored that as an option, hiring teachers, maybe, as the people that know the students the best. At that point in the pandemic, it was beyond the capacity of the people that were the staff to even think about that. And So we let that idea go, and North Shore has been involved in the discussion throughout. But when we issued the RFP for people who were interested, Cascadia was the only response. So we, in consideration of the amount of time and the amount of energy that has gone into relationship building in that, we, and the work that they do, you heard from Dr. Murray in the early part of this year, what an impact they have on the community. So Garrett and I attended kind of an open house they had at Mobius Hall last week, and they had some students that were very excited about signing up for the program. So I think you're gonna hear more as it gains traction and as as we get to the end of the runway. It's been a long runway, but yes, that was considered.
I have two other little questions. One is on the outreach, the homeless outreach. It would be great at some point to actually kind of see their data and, kind of hear a lot. I don't think we've ever been privy to that, so that would be great. And then in general, I mean, we've got some money that, can go to future work, and, we do have, a lot of interest in economic development. And I just have to plug once again a program that I heard of at National League of Cities, and that's the Willabucks program. And I think I forwarded the link to Rob, and I can certainly forward it as well. And it really helps promote local businesses, and it's fairly low cost. And I heard about it as a function of how people were using their COVID dollars.
Kirkland had a similar program as well, and that's definitely on our list of things that we're thinking about. We also have the business directory, which is such a beautiful opportunity to highlight and promote our local businesses. So different topic, but another way that we can talk about our businesses.
Councilmember Culver.
Yeah, this is a good recap. I appreciate it. And I wanted to back up actually to the ordinance that got mentioned on the first slide. That was my first council meeting, and I just want to make sure I was fully understanding all that. So this is obviously ARPA money, right? American Rescue Plan Act, COVID-19 pandemic relief. The balance of that, right, is now in our general fund, and it's sort of marked in some way. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it was moved that night. Part of that, it was originally allocated for affordable housing, right? And then that got moved to the general fund. That was the same night that we indicated to staff that we wanted to take another look at Plymouth. Noted, okay. That is all I got. Thank you all.
That was originally 3.2 million, but the 2.4 that you see that's now dedicated to the Holt purchase recovery is from that original dedication of 3.2.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councilor Luzis?
No question, just a comment. Thank you. Thank you both for all your work. Thank you, Stephanie. All of these programs are a benefit to our community, and so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilor Marshall.
I know I got them by really quickly, but it was dedicated to the Holt. You had mentioned a second ago, some amount of funds is still dedicated to this new project for low-income housing in downtown. Is that right?
So we did not do the 3.2 million. That went away with the Plymouth, but 2.4 of that is what is dedicated to the Holt property. Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions? I've got one question and then a couple of comments. What is the deadline to obligate funds? Is it the end of this year?
That was one of the, sorry, I've been the one that's the point person for reporting, so sorry to monopolize, but one of the benefits of choosing general government services through that ordinance is that we've expended all of the ARPA dollars and there is no longer any obligation date. We have fulfilled that and have reported accordingly. We'll still be required to report every year, but the reporting requirement is much reduced and is really just certification that nothing has changed.
Wonderful. I just want to say how proud I am of this council and of our staff for how we went about this work. We made I've seen other places where people made a lot of long-time investments with one-time money, and now they're all facing the consequences of that. We saw cities that, you know, bought things on their wish list instead of investing in their community. And I really appreciate all the work by both my colleagues here and my colleagues there to really make sure that we're making meaningful investments in our community because everybody was affected by the pandemic and and it's not gone yet. We're seeing a spike right now, apparently. But we made really meaningful investments to change lives. And I'm not sure if I've told this story at the dais or not, but indulge me. About a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, I was an hour north outside of Kenmore. I was at a, this will sound dorky, I was at a disc golf resort. It's a very fancy place you pay to play at, and they have a place to grab lunch and all that sort of stuff. And I was with a friend. And again, this is like Stanwood, way outside of the area. And I was wearing a t-shirt that showed the Kingdom. And the server mentioned something about how she remembered where she was when the Kingdom came down. And so we talked about that a little bit. And she mentioned, yeah, she was in her apartment in Kenmore. And so I kind of chuckled and I mentioned who I was and what I did. And she stopped and she said, you know, because apparently she still lived in Kenmore or she just recently moved, I don't know. But she said, you know, about a year ago, we got a check from the city that kept us in our apartment. And that really hit me. And my friend is sitting there staring, looking at me like, what the heck is going on here? And I had to explain it to him over lunch. But I was an hour outside of Kenmore and I just randomly ran into somebody whose life was changed by the work that we all did together. And that really hit me. So I just want to thank everybody for their work on that, because I think we were innovative, we did big things, and we're getting some great outcomes and we really helped some people. So thank you so much.
Our pleasure. And businesses that we worked with said the same thing. They're grateful to you all as well.
Yeah, no, we did some great work. Thank you so much. Councilmember reports. Hang on, just making sure. Okay, sorry, I was getting a text from Rob and I wanted to make sure it wasn't that he wanted to jump in and speak. Councilmember reports and comments. Councilmember Culver.
Yeah, heard some good talk tonight about climate action, and I'm very excited about that. I really want to have a bigger conversation about that as a council and set a bigger intention and look at what we've done and look at what that looks like going forward. So I am hoping to make a motion to have such a conversation at a future, hopefully near-term meeting, hopefully before budget season gets super underway, and I would love to have a second. Noted.
Guess for lack of second. Anything else, Councilmember Culver?
I just briefly want to say to Janet Quinn, we had a short period of overlap in working together, but I appreciate you. And I'm sorry we're losing you. Your voice, your presence, and now your absence, that all resonates. I know you hold this community near and dear, and I thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you to the public who participated in the 61st project, to the staff, and to my colleagues for passing the 61st improvements tonight. That's going to be a wonderful asset to our citizens. Thank you.
Councilmember Sasson.
Three things. As the representative on the NUSA board, I just want to acknowledge the closing of Mary's Place, and for the public good, say that efforts are in place to continue the mission of serving the underserved with that space. Secondly, I just want to congratulate the grads in the room and the parents of the grads in the room. Well done. And, you know, all those in our town. And then I also want to take a personal moment to thank Janet Quinn. The ribbon cutting ceremony at Taquidis Park was my first day out as a candidate for city council. And Janet was the first person I met there at the gate. And she continued to warmly be a touch point for me throughout that event. And I feel so much admiration for your service and your warmth and your kindness and your humility. I'm inspired by your value-based leadership and your humor. And I know that you will continue to be a touch point for me as long as I'm in this role. And I just want to put blessings on your next chapter. So thank you.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
To want to thank Janet for her service to the community in so many different ways over such a long period of time. It's really quite remarkable. Thank you. And to clarify that Mary's Place, I believe, is not leaving due to anything that Kenmore did. It was that, they're moving like so many, away from a congregate model. So I just want to clarify that in case anybody was confused. And I do want to report that the King Conservation District proposal for the rate increase is very modest for residential, 1.88%. It currently is at 12.79, and that's $12.79 per residential parcel. This is not a mill rate like other taxes. It's a parcel rate. So it would go up to $13.03. Commercial is all of the other categories: commercial, ag, institutional, vacant, undeveloped, and open space are similar. So I just want to give residential as a touch point. That's my report.
Councilor Lutzis.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Starting off really quickly with an update from the Seashore Transportation Forum. There was an interesting presentation by the city of Shoreline and how they're tackling last mile challenges. They've been creating neighborhood bike share and scooter share corrals and shelters in neighborhoods and bike lockers throughout neighborhoods to allow people to connect more easily with transit, with bus stops and park and rides. And they found success through this by being able to work with these share programs to create speed limit restrictions on bikes and scooters and no-go zones, while also implementing in-app surveys and discounts for people who upload a picture of them wearing a helmet. They've also implemented EV car, electric vehicle car share at different transit hubs throughout the city. Another update is from WashDOT. WashDOT is getting ready to launch an e-bike rebate program and distributing income-based vouchers to families so that they can purchase their own e-bikes. And I thought that those were some interesting highlights from that meeting. On top of that, I just want to thank our staff again for all the work that they do. Our clerks, they're essential for helping us put on this meeting, and all the city staff who help make this meeting a reality. And I specifically want to thank Janet for all of her work these last several years. I'm going to be honest for a second and say that, one of my highlights about attending KBA meetings was your friendly smile and your warm welcome, and that will be dearly, dearly missed. I wish you all the best and all the things you have to come, but I'm going to be honest and say that I'm very sad to see you go. Thank you for all of your dedicated service to our community, for being, a friend to everyone in the community and to me, and I thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you to Councilmember Culver for bringing up climate action and its importance. I'd like to wait to hear how the update from staff comes. I believe that's on the 17th or the 24th. We have an upcoming staff update, and I'm really looking forward to hearing that so that we can, as a council, discern what next steps are. So I do appreciate you bringing attention to this, and I want to be clear that it definitely is a priority, and I just need a little grounding from staff before exploring if we want to go further or how. I do want to thank Janet for her service. You've always impressed me as a council member. I know I haven't had a lot of time and personal connection with you, but I have only heard wonderful things from community members, people I've met outside who have said they've been touched by you, and staff members. So genuinely, thank you. And your heart and public comments as a Kenmore resident, I want to thank you for those as well, because your comments and the things that you brought to the table were very important and heard. And you will genuinely be missed by our staff. And we definitely, as we've heard from each of us, feel a great amount of gratitude for your service here, school boards, all of the things that you have been doing. So thank you. I did have a thought, and I'm just thankful that we're moving into summer. The weather's getting nicer. But for us to remember with stuff outside of Kenmore, to be taking care of ourselves, to be looking for the light and the goodness in each other. And, you know, we've got a lot going on in our world and in our community. I'm sure thankful that we have a functioning council, that we're working together. I was really grateful to see the report on our ARPA funds and special projects. That really was heartwarming to see and hear. And Mayor, I really appreciated you. I think you might have told that story once before, but it's a beautiful story and an important one. Just made me wish we could keep doing that, because those needs, the people in need still exist. It's sad that it takes a crisis to get the funding to provide the services and support that people need. I dream of a world where we actually put the needs of the people in our communities at the top and have that funding from the federal government in addition to the state and our cities, because we need more. We shouldn't have people in need in this, one of the richest nations in the world, and cities, regions. But on that note, just please, as we're looking at all the hard news that's going on around, tragedies even in our city in the past week, keep looking for the light and have hope. Thank you.
Not a lot to report. Apologies for missing the pride flag raising. Unfortunately, I had a prior engagement out of town. I appreciate the deputy mayor stepping up and making sure that that was a success. I was when I looked later in the day on Facebook or maybe an email, I can't remember, and saw the pictures, I was kind of bummed that I couldn't be there, but I'm glad it was a good event. I'm not going to repeat what everything that my colleagues have already said, but Janet, you're going to be missed. And we really do appreciate everything. And I'll just keep it at that, but thank you for everything, truly. And with that, with no further business come before us, we are adjourned.